Very good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us today on a Saturday morning. Really glad to see you guys here. So, welcome to our FASS inaugural Back to School event in collaboration with Scale. So our master class today is by Associate Professor Kokil Jetka on From Clicks to Clues, Turning Digital Data into Communications Insights. Kokil is a leading scholar in computational communication at the NUS Faculty of Arts and Social Science, in short FASS. Her research explores computational model of language to understand online communication, social media behavior, and how digital platforms can foster constructive conversations. She holds a PhD from NTU and has postdoctoral experience at the University of Pennsylvania and NTU. Kokil is also an affiliate of the NUS Institute of Data Science and principal investigator at the NUS Center for Trusted Internet and Community. Her work spans natural language processing, social media analysis, and computational social science, making her a pioneer in the evolving intersection of communication and technology. So without further ado, Prof. Kokil, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that warm introduction, and welcome everyone. Thanks for making the time on Saturday morning. Hopefully it will be worth your time. Let me adjust the lighting a little bit. We are expecting more people, but I think it's a good time as any to get started. Hopefully the warm lights will not put you to sleep. This session is going to be about marketing and AI, but no worries, you're not expected to do any coding. Just going to make you familiar with the tools that are already at your disposal to do a marvelous job as a marketer on your next campaign. If you're not a marketer yet, one day you will be, and it's a good time as any to learn. So the purpose of today's workshop is to talk about why people behave the way they do. A lot of marketing content focuses on demographics, targets a particular demographic, but you are a consumer as well as a marketer, and you don't just click because you are female or age 35 and above. You click because something resonates. And those are the kind of things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about audience profiling. We're going to talk about what psychographics means and how to connect and design content which resonates with people. All right? To start with, this is today's agenda. We will see how much we can make through. We're going to start with first talking about what challenges marketers face, right? The challenge is that engagement metrics tell us what people click, but not why. Demographics explain who they are, not how they think. And content succeeds when it aligns with audience motivation, mindset, and moment. You feel like all of these things are going off in different directions. You learn to read the cues, but do they really offer the insights that you're hoping for? So that's what we're going to focus on today, trying to make a better connection between moving from metrics to meaning, to read the clicks that people make as cues that reflect motivation, mindset, and moment. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with the customer purchase funnel. The purchase funnel is a big part of marketing, communication, Stratcom courses. You've all learned about it. You've all learned about how the awareness is where the funnel is the broadest and you want to pull people into the funnel. And I'm just going to talk about what's on the slide and remind those of you who might be a little rusty. The awareness stage generates interest in the brand. Consideration encourages prospects to think about your market, offering over your competition, and conversion entices a call to action. This is the way traditional marketing has always worked for decades and decades. All right, this understanding that from awareness, you want people to move to consideration and then conversion. So what would this mean for a marketer? Let's just go with this for a minute. And what does this mean for a marketer? For a marketer, this would mean that right up top, to build awareness, the kind of ads you create are brand ads, which build awareness and consideration. You move on to performance ads, which have intent and purchase loyalty, which are closer to the bottom. But there can be an idea of using the full funnel approach, right? Using ads that can do both, build awareness as well as do call to action. And that's the idea that increasingly people are moving towards. Why not just start at any part of the funnel or use the full funnel approach? And the reason is that it's no longer a purchase funnel. As you'll see on the title of the slide, it's more of a customer journey in this case, where you're always surrounded by signals from the brands. You walk through your neighborhood on your phone, and your phone is sending you signals about what to buy on Lazada or Shopee. You reach the bus stop, there's an ad there from MediaCorp. You get onto the bus, you take MRT, there are some ads at the MRT. You walk through a mall, and I don't even need to tell you how many things are just surrounding you, urging you to buy. You are always in the funnel. You're always somewhere in the funnel. That's why the funnel no longer has any value to think about it that way. That's why I've written that it's a customer journey, right? Many users have already have mid or bottom funnel intent. You are already pretty sure of what you want to do as a customer. Yet the campaign continues to target them with top funnel awareness ads. If someone is already aware of your brand and they're already interested, there is no point sending them more awareness ads. The idea is to follow full funnel approach and take them closer to conversion through a call to action. Right, so this is the first challenge marketers face in needing to change the perception about what is the right time and way to contact their potential customer. The second challenge that marketers face is that users are not stupid. You are one of the users as well as one of the creators of this content. While this survey is based on data from the US, I think it would apply to most markets with high internet penetration. What you see are users' pet peeves, that is attitudes towards digital advertising in the US, September 2024. You'll see right up top, the one thing that people are annoyed by is ads on the internet. So you do not want to come across as ads on the internet, which creates a dilemma. Then what, as marketers, are you supposed to do? Okay, so let's see if there are some other cues in here that you could learn from. Okay, let's look further down. It annoys me when I receive online ads based on my search history. I don't mind advertising if I get free content. That is interesting, and in Singapore, everyone loves a good deal. That's one cue we can get from here. I have bought products because celebrities or influencers advertise them. 19%, not bad. So 1 out of 5 people might actually buy something if it's endorsed by someone they look up to. And then at the bottom, you see, very interestingly, only 1 person in 10 has difficulty distinguishing advertising from content. People are not stupid. If you try to design or push ads at them, they can tell they are ads. There is a reason why you want to design smarter content and content that aligns more with their needs, right? Not with their purchase behavior, but with their needs. And this gives you some insights onto how you could do that. So the negative sentiments towards intrusive and irrelevant online ads pose major challenges for marketers. So what should we do about this? Let's set the stage. We've talked about the challenge, we've talked about the engagement funnel. Now let's set the stage for what you are going to do next. It's 1st November, and I don't know if you are ready, but Christmas is around the corner. If you all are in full-time jobs or you're looking for jobs, it's a very high likelihood that Christmas is going to come up and a Christmas campaign is going to come up. So let's get you in the mood. For Christmas, this is what Orchard Road will probably look like. You'll see lots of fairs, lots of cute lighting everywhere. You'll see lovely Christmas trees. Okay, and of course the themes of Singapore are always shopping, eating, and staycays. And you see more of that here. This is a World Christmas Market that's held in Singapore every year. And of course, some people might even want to go for something more elite like a play. All right, so you have all of this information about things that Singaporeans are interested in. Can we design something that resonates with what they want to spend their Christmas doing? Also, of course, a lot of them will be heading abroad. Can we also try to integrate this in with everything else about shopping and staycays and travel? So here's something I would like to know from you all. If you can pull out your phones and do this short 3-question poll. I want to understand you better, and I promise this ties in with what we are trying to do here. So the first simple question I have for you all is, what is your holiday goal? Yeah, I think this is the question you'll see when you, yes. This is the question you're seeing when you open your Slido. Who's your holiday crew? Who do you typically take your holidays with? Okay, I'll show you the answers in a bit. Some of you are still answering. We see some numbers fluctuating. Okay. So here's the first question you need to think about when you are planning your Christmas break. Okay. The next thing is, let's see if I can move to the next question. What's your ideal December mood? Wait, where did this? Yeah, what is your ideal December mood? Here are 4 examples: adventure, food, shopping, and staycays. But of course, there are some other reasons why people enjoy doing things in December, and I would love to know what your mood is. What is your mood when you're deciding what to do in December? I will explain why these questions are relevant, I promise. Okay, last 10 seconds. I see adventure is catching up to shopping, very nice. Okay, and last question. What's your shopping style? Now, December is probably going to be a month in which you'll do a lot of splurging, but what's your style? You see 4 possible types of shopping styles. Of course, there can be millions, but for a sense of clarity, let's talk about these 4. Yeah, this is a question that has a nice split. We have some curators who seek things that reflect taste and identity. We have some strategists who research, compare, and wait. It's like a good marketer should. We have some explorers who enjoy the hunt. And then we also have some people who stop and think about what would make people smile. So we have people of all 4 kinds here. And I will explain why this is relevant. All right, now that we have your answers, we're going to talk briefly about the way content planning is set up before I come back to how you answered this and what it tells me. Yes, it already tells me something. What you shared with me is your psychographic footprint for December. Based on your answers, I already know something about you, and I can already use that in my profiling of you and in drafting messages for you. So that's why talking about social media content planning comes next. You want to plan, And of course, a lot of you would be familiar with a framework like this. This is a 5 Ws framework that talks about what dimensions you should think about when you're planning your content calendar. This is very standard stuff, right? I'm going to spin it around a little bit. And I'm going to talk about some analysis that my students and I did together in the past couple of weeks with data from Singapore. So we were looking at data from Starbucks and IKEA and some other brands, specifically the Singapore social media accounts for these brands, to see what was resonating with people. So let's start right at the top when we're talking about the 5 Ws. One thing we noticed was who is being featured in these posts. We saw faces, but we didn't see just any faces. We saw largely micro-influencers, not macro-influencers, people with some pull, but not a crazy amount of pull. All right, and there's a reason why micro-influencers do work well. Let's get to that in a bit. Why? In terms of why, we saw that the content that was doing best had a call to action. Remember that the customer journey or the purchase funnel would suggest that you only put in a call to action when the person is ready to convert. But no, here we saw that the highest engagement was happening on posts that had calls to action. Posts with a clear and specific CTA can increase conversions by up to 161%. We will talk about the what, and some of your answers will inspire the answers to what I think the content should be about in your planning calendar. Let's talk about when. When should you put this out? Any good marketer worth their salt knows that there are timings to put out posts on social media. What my students saw was that for Singapore particularly, it was lunchtimes. In general, for the world, it's usually early morning and late in the evening. Where? Now, where is pretty obvious as well. You're, of course, going to target and tailor your content for the different social media platforms. Which platform you should use would depend on what the goal is. And we can talk about that also in a minute. And simple things like how you format and how you frame and design the elements in your content make a huge difference to whether it gets clicked or not. So let's talk about each of these briefly. First, we have the why. So why are you sharing this? What do you want people to do? That should come across very, very clearly. You'll see a lot of posts where the post invites you to write in the comments or tag your friends. Tag the friend that you want to take on this lovely holiday. Tag a friend that you want to share this deal with. Those work really well. Interactive content like polls, quizzes, and live Q&A sessions drive participation and build community. Again, thinking about what exactly is the purpose here. You want people to stay engaged, come back, make friends, involve their friends here. And this trend encourages two-way communication. It's not just about people bringing in other people, but it's also important then for the content manager, the account creator, to engage with the people who are engaging with the content. This has to be two-way, right? So this is the why. The why is unfortunately often forgotten in the rush to make social media content. Let's talk about the where and the when. Again, this is a no-brainer. I know that everybody has content calendars that think about the where and the when. Of course, videos and stories outperform static posts in both likes and comments. Album posts, which are multi-image stories, drive the highest total interactions. So these are numbers based on analysis that my students and I did over the past couple of years, as I mentioned. We saw that album posts drive the highest total interactions, about approximately 5.8 million, and the best engagement per follower. So if you look at per follower, what is likely to get them the most engaged, right? You have to, because normalize the numbers you're looking at based on the number of followers. The peak hours, as I said, these hours were for Southeast Asia in general, because we were also looking at content for Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. The peak hours were 9 to 11 a.m. and 7 to 8 a.m. The best times, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday. But for Singapore, you know, we love our lunch times. Those are the best times to reach people. Yes, and short-form videos. Other research suggests that short-form videos generate 50% more engagement than any other type of social media content, and 80% of consumers prefer watching videos. So in this video tech age, what can marketers with a traditional background do? They can do a lot. We'll talk about that, all right? They can do a lot. The skills that we learn through traditional marketing are still very relevant in picking up the principles and designing meaningful content. That's why we're here. Okay, so we've talked about the where and the when, and now let's talk about the who, as I promised you. There is a bunch of research that suggests that it's not the major influencers that actually drive conversions, but actually the smaller ones. And I'm sure this is not a surprise to many of you who may have tried this out already. But what the analysis that we did in the past couple of weeks also showed was that the micro-influencers with less than 1,000 followers showed stronger engagement, that is like 10% more, suggesting value in community scale influence. The creator-generated posts were getting up to 3x more likes, 3 times more likes than the brand posts. That's incredible. If you're not engaging with your influencers, if you're not engaging with your best advocates, then you're really missing out on something. So the idea could be to empower positive tone users as micro-ambassadors, but also engage negative tone users transparently, and to co-create content. Remember that now Instagram does offer, and other platforms as well, offer a way to openly show co-created content between 2 accounts. And as users of these accounts, as users of these platforms, and also marketers on them, you should be aware of what are the new features that are coming out. Something very interesting that Adam Mosseri, who's the head of Instagram, said in a talk recently was that Instagram is primarily a messaging app. People are not really using it to post content. People are more likely to use the messaging feature to share content with each other. What can you do to inspire people to share your content? Right? That is one call to action that actually works on Instagram. So what are the patterns of usage for the different social media platforms that you're considering? That should be an important consideration. Okay. The what. We are going to talk about the what a little bit more in detail. But if we talk about themes, what we found was across Southeast Asia, the themes that bonded people the most and the most confidently was food. What we saw was that across Southeast Asia, health actually got some negative comments. Of course, Singaporeans are fitness nuts. We love everything to do with health, but not so true in the rest of Southeast Asia. Leisure and lifestyle themes evoked the most positive sentiment. Food dominated across all segments, and content such as tutorials, behind-the-scenes clips, and quick tips was thriving. In our analysis of IKEA particularly, we saw that users resonate with real home improvement storytelling and clutter-free practical design. So what you're seeing here is storytelling themes, leisure themes, food, as the major themes that are bonding people across their different user needs and values, across the different psychographics. Can you tie your content to say something about one of these themes? Right? That could be the idea. And finally, storytelling over selling, localized emotion framing versus, so thinking about comfort and ritual versus value and access. People are on the app and they don't want to be preached at. They don't want to be advertised to. So tell them something that makes them feel comfortable. Because when is it that you're consuming content? It's in the awkward times when you're standing in a queue, when you're waiting for your bus, when you're standing in the MRT, when your food isn't done yet, you're waiting for your order. People are uncomfortable in those situations. Give them something of comfort. Give them something related to a cozy ritual. Tailor posting cadence and emotional tone to cultural context. I've given you some ideas of what Singaporeans prefer. But think about the cadence as well. Think about what would be the right cadence for the customers who are interested. And also think about how to tailor the tone of your message. What we found was, in general, the strongest brand positivity was in Vietnam and Philippines for the same brand, while it was lower in Singapore and Indonesia. That doesn't mean Singapore and Indonesia hate this brand. that just means there's a different tone and different positivity to it, which might be a factor to consider when you are tailoring that content. All right? So I've thrown a bunch of ideas at you about the social media content planning framework. And we're next going to talk about the psychographics that I made you answer, the psychographic questions that I made you answer. But before I go into that, I'm going to go back a few slides and come back to the framework overall, and just ask if you all have questions at this stage. Questions? Call to action. That's a good question. That's a call to action. It's the little nudge that invites you to write something in the comments or share it with your friends. Like there might be an inside joke in the caption or in the picture. There might be a reference to your favorite Netflix series. Yes? How is AI content performing? That is a very good question. Recent research suggests that AI content is still not performing at par with human content. But I think that is, but I'm going to ask you all about that in a bit. I do think that is a barrier that's going to be crossed very quickly. Yeah. We'll come back to your question. That's a very good question. Okay, talking about AI-powered content. Yes?
I think you mentioned that content with faces.
Yes.
Like relatability.
Yes.
I think it more generally have more outreach as compared to those that don't.
Yes.
To what extent do you think it's more of like big text intervention in curating these views from people rather than actually actively reacting to the content?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Your name?
Max.
Max. So Max is asking, okay, fine. Faces are doing better in content, but how much is this the algorithm versus people's actual intent, right? That's your question. That's a very good question. Yes, we've all observed this, and we all have changed our posting style because we know that we need faces in order to get engagement. The algorithm has perpetuated this. Yes, at the beginning there would have been a human preference for faces because we are social animals and we want to see faces. We want to see what your brilliant camera phone is giving you. But at this point, yes, the algorithm is also perpetuating and ensuring that you see more and more faces and less objects in your timeline. It's probably a function of both, and it's just become worse because of the algorithms. And that is why now the algorithms have now also shifted to Reels, so short video content with people in them. It's just we are chasing our tails. Unless you design your own platform.
I just speak from personal experience because
Yeah.
like a friend who's in business.
Sure, yes.
We were just talking about years ago about your like count for like a post as a ratio to your total number of followers.
Yes.
So, because I like to, I mean, I'm not an influencer, I think I'm not even a comms alumni, but because I like
You have great insights to share, and that's what counts.
I take photos of like landscapes.
Yes.
I take photos and go around and notice that my like count is always like 10 people
Yeah.
out of like 1,000 plus followers, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas we look at like influencers and make some, I don't know what. I mean, of course, as friends we judge, right? Like
Yeah.
weird posts about
If it's a girl, yes.
like
If it's a girl and her manicure, yes.
like also like come style with me this like doesn't really have any relation to me.
Yes.
But they have relation to many people. But like the ratio is much higher, for example. So, yeah, just an illustrative example.
Yes, absolutely. Landscape pictures are so hard to capture, but there you go. The numbers are low. What you could possibly style that as is a behind the scenes of how you captured that perfect shot. Again, thinking about how you could incorporate a reel without really adding more effort to what you're already doing to create this content. Absolutely true. And partly, yes, it's an algorithm thing. You're not going to change what you post, though. You can't do this all of a sudden. So you just have to deal with what the algorithm, what the algorithm wants from you, if this is actually something that you want to drive. Yeah.
I mean, it's the balance between like your authentic self and what you choose to put out to people to.
100%, 100%. If you're curating your personal profile, again, I know someone who has managed to use her challenges with cancer to curate her own brand and her own image. So you do have to make the conscious choice about whether you are the product or your message is the product. And both work really well. So I have a friend who believes that she is the product, and she believes in engaging with everyone who posts or comments on her posts. I have someone else who believes her content is the product. She never intervenes. People come in and they have hot debates on her content, but she never intervenes. It depends on what is the brand you're trying to build. It depends on what is the identity. Yeah? There's no one right answer. There are 3 examples that I've given you already. And then 4th and 5th, if we count Max. Yes?
So very intrigued by your statement there that Vietnam and Philippines have a very different content.
Positivity, yeah. Brand positivity.
Singapore and Indonesia. Could you share a bit more about the nuances of why this is so?
Sure. What that analysis, thanks for asking that question. What that analysis was looking at was just how people across these different countries were talking about Starbucks, to be very honest. And what we saw was that the brand positivity in some countries, as I mentioned, was higher. That is, they were using more positive sentiments or using more joyful terms to talk about Starbucks, while Singapore and Indonesia were not. It could be a bunch of factors. It could be, first of all, just people's personalities. Not saying that we are grumpy, but we just have a different vocabulary, right? It could be something as simple as vocabulary. It could also be something like access or perception. Maybe it's really true that because Indonesia has so many options for coffee, it doesn't really care about Starbucks. But it's definitely feedback that would be useful to a marketer, and it's something to keep in mind. Thanks. Any other questions? You guys are the experts. I'm just in the classroom. Yes?
Questions on the timing aspect of this question.
Yeah.
See, over here is very specific timing, lunchtime, later.
Yeah.
Any other insights in terms of timing in more macro perspective, like time of the year? What I'm asking
Oh, time of the year. Yeah, yeah.
For example, 10 days time is going to be 11/11, right? So
Yeah.
we're receiving a lot of information and messages of this.
I know.
Is this kind of strategy effective?
Super important. Yes, yes, yes. So maybe you're late. Are you late? Did you enter late, arrive late?
No, no, so
You were here, right? So yeah, I was talking mostly about Christmas as a possible timing. But yes, 11, 11, 10, 10, 9, 9. Oh my God. I can't get my husband off the phone on 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10. All of these things are super important because now users are also clued into the cadence. These numbers would mean nothing in some parts, some other geographies, but in Southeast Asia, these numbers, the content and the deals that come out on these numbers does mean a lot. But in that chaos, how are you going to attract someone like me who just gets overwhelmed by all the deals? What are you going to send me that I'll actually click? Yes, in terms of timing, there's daily times, but there's also weekly times when people are likely to have the time to engage with the stuff. And that's another thing, what Adam Mosseri at Instagram realized, and what my friend whose content is the brand, she realized was that she's posting a lot of text-heavy content and people can't sit around and read it, so they will save it. You will save it in your feeds and then come back to it later. You will put it in your favorites. So what is the time when people are coming back to read your content? When is the right time to post it when you're getting more likes than saves? That is, when do you have their immediate attention? Those are the things you can figure out based on timing. It's a great question. Yeah. Yes.
Thanks for your sharing. So I noted that point previously about the encouraging of two-way communications.
Yes.
The importance of building community and interaction with your followers.
Yeah.
But how do you manage that with the need for content moderation? Because you also need to manage the expectations of your own management, right? If they're sensitive about hate comments, criticism.
Yeah. Again, there are two approaches. One is you address it head on. The other is like my friend whose content is the brand. You go in and you keep deleting it. You set up filter words. Now, actually, a lot of platforms are really good about letting you create these filter words so that the hate comments don't hit your profile at all. They don't appear at all. They are automatically moderated. So I would encourage you all to find out about these moderations, these automatic filtering rules, and use them to your advantage to protect your mental well-being and that of your boss. Definitely, any publicity is good publicity, but having good rules in place ensures that the people who do engage with your brand feel safe. So that is one of the goals driving better content moderation. Freedom of speech and all is great, but you want that the people who engage with your brand feel safe. And you should do anything in your power to ensure that. That's a great question. Thanks. Anything else? Any other experiences from the field you want to talk about? Yes? Yeah, that's a good question, and it would come back to the things that you see on the screen. I don't know how you all are in the mornings, but as a woman, working woman, who's also trying to manage a house and errands, my hands are full. I'm not going to have time to make purchases on a weekday in the mornings. So tying your content to the cadence in the lives of your men and women makes a lot of sense, right? My understanding of the content being pushed out is that you already know what needs to be pushed out and who's the target demographic for that. So if there's not much flexibility in terms of who it's targeting, then you can have flexibility about when and where you target them, right? If there is flexibility about who you're targeting, then sure, have a balance or focus on your strengths. So these are again two strategies to think about. Do you want to focus on your strengths and make people who actually follow you and care about you feel more welcome? Or do you want to focus on your weaknesses and reduce them? So if your target demographic, the one you do well at, is men, how do you make your content more interesting for women? That could be a whole strategy. Mixing the two might confuse people. So going about it very consciously makes a lot of sense. Yes?
Looking at that, right, would that be business strategy for organic versus paid media, in terms of content, and as well as like, how do we look into new users versus existing users?
Yes, again, great question. Organic versus paid media. As you saw, and this is something I'm going to come back to. As you saw, people don't really like ads. So what you're dealing with is already a very strong resistance to any kinds of paid media. So you're going to have to think about very much about who's your target demographic and how particular they are about not seeing ads. That's the first thing. The second thing is about new users, something that I just said, which is if you've decided to make a campaign about new users, please do not confuse your existing users. You're going to have to then ensure that a particular part of your content cycle just does the new user stuff. If you try to balance new users with old users at the same time, everybody is going to be very confused. So you're going to have to go about it consciously and then engage with those creators, those collaborators who can help you tap into the new users market. In terms of how to do that, I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
Quick question. So, I have a brand, a company. So recently there was an influencer. So maybe if it's a local influencer, we have more understanding of their profile. But it's a overseas influencer. She has like 50,000 followers and a few hundred likes per photo. So she required our service and we provided the service. So we also saw that a lot of hotels in Singapore and a lot of like leisure entertainment actually sponsored her. as she posted the stories. But when she reposted for our brand, there was 0 followers or 0 engagement from her post. So I'm suspecting that it's a purchase. Like all the likes for her followers are purchased.
Oh gosh.
So is there a way for us to identify as we engage with influencers that it's organic or not, even prior to collaborating with them?
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that experience, and indeed that is an experience that's likely to happen to marketers, right? How do you distinguish real engagement? I think the only way out is to spend time investigating the comments and the shares and looking beyond the likes, to look at how many people have stayed and for how long. One thing that I often do, I mean, we've all had a situation in our lives when we had to look for people who sell services on Instagram, right? Not services, but wedding services. That's what I meant, guys. So you cannot just go by the number of likes. You have to see, especially for something as important as your wedding, you have to go and read the comments, see whether those profiles are real, click into them. So not just level 1 of checking the influencers, but also level 2 of checking the followers of these influencers to see if they're real. And that involves a lot of homework, but that's why you have interns. Yes? Use your interns well. Yes, what's up?
Sorry, it's me again.
No, why? Please don't apologize.
Because you were asking about inorganic and curated content, I couldn't help but ask a theoretical question. To what extent do you think content is actually really organic these days? Do you think they are more than not curated in the end when it comes to us?
I mean, it depends on what you consider to be organic versus curated. I think, yes, everything, because of the way social media is formed and because of the way algorithms go, I'm getting so critical theory on you guys. Everything is curated for sure. But organic means something that is elicited naturally, not necessarily something that someone's paid for. I think her point was organic versus paid, not organic versus curated. Everything on social media is curated, and even if you don't curate it, the algorithm will curate it for you.
Yeah, because I thought of paid equals to curated because...
No, everything is curated. Even if you don't want to curate stuff, you want to be as authentic as possible, the algorithm will only show people some of your posts and not all. It will just show them the top posts. So the algorithm is anyway curating the content for you. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. Are you famous for any particular picture?
No.
That's opportunity. So we'll talk about a SWOT analysis as well. You have to figure out the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
You mean fame across the public or fame across the friends?
I mean, I think one is a sign of possible fame across both. But yes, whatever it is that engages people most could be what your authentic voice is in. And curating according to that voice might be the future key to fame, if that's what you chase. No? Okay, lovely questions, yes.
Most marketers who create content on social media, the management will always ask them, what's the ROI?
Yeah.
What's the revenue uplift?
Yes.
Do you have any insight into why some brands, for example, Red Bull on social media, their social media content has nothing to do with the drink. It's always showing people doing extreme sport.
Yes, thank you for this question.
So it has nothing to do with selling
Yes.
drink, or luxury brands like Loewe on TikTok.
Yes.
They don't talk about buy our bags, buy our clothes. It's always engaging influencers,
Yeah.
being part of the social media zeitgeist.
Yes.
They don't talk about product at all.
Yep.
Are there any insights into how these companies run their social media and perhaps what goes on behind the scenes? How do their social media managers convince management to say, let's do content for the sake of doing content?
Okay, brilliant question. What's your name?
John.
John has given me the perfect segue into the second part of today's talk. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. What you see online, you see the rest of us, regular people, just posting our lives and being simple about it. But you see those quality content coming out from the mega houses of fashion and and the glamour world that are so aspirational, and you're like, oh my God, I want to be her, I want to live this life. It just elevates you and engages you, but it has nothing to do with the product. You see Red Bull, people drinking Red Bull, doing all kinds of stupid shit, but the only time you had Red Bull was to stay awake at night. So what's really happening? And this is what I do want to talk about in the second part. I'm going to give you a 5-minute bio break if you all need it. We just take a 5-minute break so that you can take this all in, and we'll come back and talk about my answer to your question. Okay? It's only 5 minutes because I have so much to cover, and I do want to cover it. So just 5 minutes, folks. Thank you.
Will
Who's your second speaker? It's not here yet, right? Okay. Okay. 11:30 is when my thing. At 11:30? I see. Okay. Okay. Oh, 45 minutes lunch only. Oh, poor guys. Yeah, okay. Oh, very nice. Yeah, great engagement. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very impressed. these are people you want to pull back into class, is it? The idea is back to school. You want to enroll them back into master's programs.
Yes, this comes from skill CT, short courses.
Yeah.
So like probably like a taster and a bit also bringing them back. Like.
So there's no AI and marketing course.
No, we couldn't find it. But
Okay,
they said
we'll design something.
Yes.
Send us an email. We have a new person currently who's teaching social media analytics with AI. So he'd be able to design it, and of course I'm also doing stuff. So we'll ensure that something is set up.
Yeah, because we're looking and then we heard that it's in the works, but it's not on time for today.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, if someone has already indicated that it's in the works, great. Otherwise, you can just CC me and I'll push it forward from my side.
Yes. I think that would be, it's the talk of the town now.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Everyone's interested in that.
Yeah.
Even the questions were like,
Yeah.
big things or not.
Yes. Thanks. Okay. All right, folks. We are. Yeah. It's time to talk about you. It's time to talk about the people in this room. And you've already answered this poll. We have 48% of y'all who are interested in fam jams, who are likely to take your holidays with your family. We have 24% who are likely to do partner getaways. But then we have another quarter who are likely to either go off alone or with friends. Right? So this tells us one thing about values and motives. If you're planning something, if you're planning outreach and awareness amongst the same demographic, you're interested in the last quarter, right? You're interested in the solo travelers and the backpackers with friends who are most likely to expand your networks. So that's one thing to think about. Then you have your ideal December mood. Wait, how do I? Yeah. I don't know, man. Everyone wants to rest and relax, and that gives you a sense of what should be the tempo of your content as well. What should be the energy level of it, right? You see that food, adventure, okay, I see some numbers changing now. You see, food is important, but so is adventure, shopping, and photos for the feed. So we're seeing that people are interested in authentic experiences. They're interested in, well, most of them are interested in rest and reset, which tells you how important steak is. And chill content is for your December content calendar. All right. This also tells me something about you all. You all are working too hard and you all need a break. Understood. And then we see shopping styles, which perhaps you all understand most clearly. What are people's shopping styles? You see the curator, the strategist, the explorer, the connector. You have people who want to reflect their taste and identity. That is what motivates them. And this now needs to reflect in the content that you put out there, which also should reflect their motives, right? So yes.
Actually, I think some of us can be 2 or 3 of the profiles at the same time.
100%. But you're trying to profile, again, you can be a bunch of things. You're interested in how people are reacting to your content. So I asked you all to choose one, right? Of course, when you're choosing something for your parent versus a colleague, it would be different. Here, though, what I'm trying to understand through this question and conveying to you all is, think about how your audiences are consciously choosing what to engage with. Very likely they're going to choose things that resonate with their identity. Even if you are a bunch of shopping styles, what you all gravitated towards was taste and identity. That is what you prioritize, and that is what your consumers are going to prioritize as well. So as I said, this has already given me a psychographic footprint of who you all are in December. If I want to reach out and design content for you, I can, and I will. I will design content using AI, and I will show you how. So these underlying motives shape what content grabs your attention. You have just proved my point. And the same logic underlies digital analytics because metrics are proxies for psychological cues. And what kind of cues do I mean? How do I make this full screen? Yeah. Here's an idea of psychographic profiling people. Yes, there are many kinds of people possible. Everyone can have different profiles, but if I try to crystallize the values and motives that drive people, I can look at their age and gender, but beyond that, their values and motives are important to understand. And I will explain the source of this, John. John has this question, okay, where did this come up from? I will explain in the next slide. But as you see here, you have Gen Z millennials who want to be kept on trend, top left, high income, innovative, social. You have the millennials who want to be inspired. They are curators or gifters. They already have some money to gift. We have the divert me, the young people. They are playful, impulsive, explorers. It's so hard to keep their attention. Oh my God, always on their phones. We have the update me people who are professionals who have just a little bit of time. You have to very carefully think about what you're giving them, what content you're giving them. You have the give me perspective people with I think that meant high income. They are mid-career, reflective, open-minded, people like you all maybe. Then you have the educate me people. You see that these are the professionals, again, what you were like a few years ago perhaps, or also even some of you in this room. Professionals 25 to 45 analytical planner strategists. So you see these 6 psychographic profiles, 6 types of user needs, each of them reflecting people at different stages in their lives. Each of them providing ideas of how you could design content. Content that is not necessarily exactly about the product, but more about creating and crafting a good story. And these ideas come from, okay, this is like just some more stuff which I got through ChatGPT. I have this framework, I understand it, my data tells me it exists. So this is how I used AI to help connect what these profiles were with how I could design content for them. So what AI suggested was, because these people are like this, the kind of values that they prioritize and the kind of values you can prioritize in their content. For example, for Keep Me on Trend is innovation. For Inspire Me is something about creativity. For Divert Me is just something out of the box that's completely different, completely left field. Educate Me, competence and mastery. Give me perspective, just give them some understanding and reflection. Give them another perspective on life. And Update Me, control and efficiency. For those of us who really, really need to be in control of our lives and our plans. Right? So this is one way in which I have used AI, and you will see it in my next few slides. I've actively used it to design content that can tell the same boring story about a Christmas campaign in more interesting ways. Let's see how. As I said previously, this is based on a real framework. John asked me, how are these big content companies keeping people engaged? This is BBC's secret. Now, BBC operates in hundreds of countries. Every country has a different kind of user and a news reader. They have to keep everyone engaged. They still have to post the same kind of boring stuff, usually sad stuff, usually scary stuff. But how do they keep engaging people with news? What BBC propagated to all its news centers across the world is, hey, design content based on these 6 user needs. That's why I tried to make it easy for you by connecting these 6 user needs with 6 possible psychographic profiles, just to make it easy. But for your brand, maybe some other profiles work better. For me, for today, I wanted to focus with one thing that you could take away, which is that there are 6 possible user needs, and different people would prioritize different needs. And you can think about that when you design your content. All right, let's go through these one by one. This is the kind of content that we love when we don't have time. It just tells us what to do. Christmas done in 10. Okay. You'll notice that there is some AI generated garbage here in the text. Yes, I generated these through AI. This is the only slide where it did poorly, by the way. It did okay in the others. So, how many of us would want to use update me kind of content in our content calendar for Christmas? You would not use AI generated posts, sure. But how many of you would be interested in using update me kind of content? Just short to the point, giving people what they want. I see a few hands. Unfortunately, this is a trick question. 70% of the posts that you'll see on your social media feed are update me posts, but according to the BBC, they garnered only 7% of the engagement. So if you're aiming for short and sweet, that is not the style that is going to get people engaged. They're going to get the message, but are they going to act on the message? Which brings up the reason to think about other kinds of content. Think about content that keeps people on trend, for instance. The person you are targeting here, the kind of person in the image, young, socially expressive, novelty-driven, somebody who's an explorer. This is AI-generated content. Inspire me, someone who is creative, purpose-led, emotionally motivated. You see ideas here for how to make Christmas more meaningful. Again, ideas for how to get people engaged. What's up, Max?
Governments love this.
Yeah, governments love this, exactly. That is the psychographic profile they're going for. Those are the kind of values and motivated people that they want. That's what they're targeting, whether deliberately or not. All right. Then we have divert me. I love the caption for this because it is so accurate. It defines who we are in our personal relationships. This says nothing about it being Christmas. The image conveys it all though. And there would be add-on stuff, or perhaps this would be a part of a carousel which could lay out whatever it is that you want to ultimately get people to engage with. And this is the kind of post I'd like to share with my friends that I last played a game with. Educate me. Again, we're thinking about the young parents here. The educate me profile is for the structured mid-career professionals who are valuing mastery not just for themselves but also perhaps for their family. Thinking about connecting a very traditional thing that we've stopped thinking too much about with something that we could teach and impart to our children and to ourselves. Gives me perspective. This sounds like a lot of you who just want some rest after a very hectic year. Less rush, more rest. This Christmas, simplify your plans and make space for each other. So 6 different ways to share the same story and script the same ideas about Christmas. Doesn't really have to be about the product, but about the story you weave around it. And ChatGPT or whatever generative AI you use can help you do that. As long as you clearly specify what you want to get at, what is the imagery you want to convey, it can help you get there. Now, do you have questions about AI? Okay, this didn't take just one prompt. This took a lot of research, and that's the secret behind successfully using AI for your marketing content. I had pulled out all this research from BBC about what the user needs are. I had other information about what the theme should be. I had a particular demographic in mind, Singapore. I told AI that Singaporeans love to shop, love to staycay, love to eat food, and so on. I put all of that information in to help AI give me the content that would reflect the Singaporean lifestyle and their moods for December. So it does take research, but research is something marketers are good at. You know your audiences. How to adapt it and use AI to help you, that's the key. Questions? Any questions? Yes?
There are a lot of AI tools out there, so which ones are performing the best for like marketing or like generating content?
If my husband saw this, he would be very disappointed because he would say that Midjourney is the best. But really, that's the best part, that there's so many out there and so many of them are free, that you as marketers, it's your playground. Just find what you like. Never pay for a model again. Very bad for the labor industry, but very good for marketers. Yeah, I think the answer keeps changing. I would encourage you all to get simple things that work well, such as a Canva membership. Again, I'm not sponsored by Canva, unfortunately, but Canva does let you do cute short videos, animations, does let you design cute content. My slides today are all done in Canva. Just having higher quality content available is easier for an amateur today. And that reflects in every single aspect of styling. Yes, any other questions? It is still important to craft an identity and a personality, and for that you can involve somebody. But I think increasingly the ability to make content can be divorced from the idea of creating a brand identity. Brand strategy is very much a high-level executive function. Yes?
When you use AI, you ask them to generate the hashtag prompts?
Yes. Again, they might or might not work. It's best to listen. Social media listening is really important. Listen to what people are seeing, saying, feeling, and doing. Use that to decide what your final hashtags would be. These might be completely off topic, but the overall human interest, the story building is still going to be very relevant. So that's one thing, right? AI, no matter how good it gets, is not going to know what the latest memes are, what the latest culture fad is. It's going to take humans to do that, but you all are good at that. Let it do the rest. Let it do the strategizing for you. Questions? Okay, I'm going to move to the last bit of what I promised you all. I don't think we have time for the reflection activity, but it's a bingo you can play with your other marketer friends. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. This is the bingo card. You can take a photo. You should just look through your social media timeline now that you are budding experts. You should just look through your social media timeline and see if you get a bingo, basically. If you spot 3 kinds of content in any diagonal or vertical or horizontal line, you won. You should do this on your own time. Again, this is just to help you understand. First of all, this will help you get familiar with seeing this stuff on your timeline. Now you'll see it everywhere. You'll be like, oh yeah, this is that kind of content. And second, it will help you identify gaps. You'll see what kind of content people aren't posting, right? If you're not seeing something at all in your feed, that is the opportunity that you can tap. So this is the same stuff I was showing you earlier, crafted into stuff, synthesized into something that you're likely to see on your feed. Okay, coming back to a question that came up earlier, which is about the funnel and what should be done. So an incremental return, the question that had come up was, marketers are interested in getting to know what metrics went up. So your social media strategy, what change did it create? The one thing you have to convince your boss is to measure you on the right metrics, right? If the goal of your social media campaign should at best be to create awareness, which is to drive up the impressions, to drive up the engagement, and at the least drive up the conversion, because that's the least likely outcome. That is why it is important to know the 4 types of signals which I didn't go into today because I think that's obvious for every social media marketer, which are the see, say, feel, do. Show your boss that there are changes being made, changes happening to how many people are seeing your content, saying or talking about your content, feeling about your content, so the positive sentiment is going up, and doing, which is actually clicking through. See, say, feel, do. Very standard framework that I know that all of you all know, so I did not talk about it today. But this ties back to the idea that if you're following a full funnel strategy and you are sending everybody brand performance posts, then how do you measure what's coming out of it? So the newest strategy being followed these days is an incremental return on ad spend, which focuses on measuring and optimizing the additional revenue generated by advertising efforts that would not have occurred organically. The idea is to make your spend more iterative and see and measure at each stage what exactly is changing, and perhaps use that to defend your marketing, your strategic marketing choices. The idea is to show how every cent to the dollar is making changes to the engagement metrics just mentioned. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's a start. I talked about this. I do want to close with some thoughts about what you should do with all of these insights that I've given you all. This is where marketers are posting worldwide. This is where marketers worldwide are posting their content these days. 86% of content is still on Facebook. It does depend on your demographic, of course. So take all of this with a pinch of salt and remember that these bars are static. It's not reflecting the growth in each of these platforms year on year. So what are the platforms that are really growing? It depends on where you are. If you're in Singapore, Singaporeans are using TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. Possibly those are the places to think about. Platform choice is increasingly driven by campaign objectives and audience alignment. We have talked about the profiles. If the profile you're interested in is on TikTok, then that's where your content should be. And talking more about full funnel strategy, here are some numbers about whether it actually works. We just talked about the return on ad spend strategy. Brands that shift from a top of funnel focus to a full funnel strategy saw their IROS improve by 47%. So they were better able to defend their ad spend because they moved to a full funnel strategy where all of their content was trying to drive people to conversion rather than assuming that people were still at the awareness stage. So brands that embrace incremental testing see 18% higher revenue growth. But historically, digital advertising spend has been heavily weighted towards performance. We know that 60 to 70% of the investment is in the lower funnel metrics. For the full funnel approach, we need to show that the integrated solution delivers higher effectiveness than individual solutions. So push for these, introduce your bosses to these numbers, introduce your bosses to a full funnel strategy. Push for the use of incremental ad testing, incremental ad spend as a way to justify your ad expenditure, and hopefully that will give you the nirvana you want. I can only hope. You have to try it out and tell me it works, if it works in the field. Any questions? Yes?
Would you attribute the current failure of 12 cupcakes to poor marketing?
I mean,
also a lot of F&B in Singapore are failing. Is it
yes.
because there are no good marketers in Singapore?
I think we confuse, I think we blame the marketers too much for what might be a very simple infrastructure problem. Singapore is impossibly expensive. These days I am just making my cupcakes myself. No, we should. We definitely should. But there are some challenges which marketing can't solve. The product has to have strength and not rely just on marketing strategy. So if you're spending too much on marketing and not enough on reducing your basic costs, you're obviously going to fall in the red. And right now, running costs are extremely high in Singapore. I feel bad for 12 cupcakes. And yes, that is why a lot of F&B outlets are shutting down, because your running costs are so high and they're increasing and your profits cannot keep up with it. You cannot keep subsidizing your content, subsidizing your content and not expect it to affect your solvency. Yes? Yes, your question.
Yeah, it may be a silly question.
It's
But
not
when
a silly
you say
question.
Algorithm controls it. Who controls the algorithm?
That's a very good question. The product managers control the algorithm because the product managers want to ensure that that the people who are spending money on ads feel like there are sufficient impressions happening. So basically the big bosses control the algorithms. They tell the engineers, hey, you've got to tweak this so that people see more ads. Have you ever noticed that when you're scrolling through Instagram stories, every second thing is an ad? What the hell? They want to ensure that the impressions remain super high so that when new marketers come in, new advertisers come in, Instagram or whatever can say, hey, look, the impressions are so high. For every 5 minutes that one person spends on our app, for 3.5 minutes, they are looking at ads. Yeah? It's very good for marketers, but for consumers, not so great. Any other questions? I know that I did not cover exactly what is a full funnel strategy, but you are good researchers, conscientious people. You will do your homework. Yes? Yes?
I think just a general question. Is the full funnel strategy and what you're sharing me, is this more relational? Is there anything with that to like short, is it to the short term or to the long term? Is there any time factor?
I think we are increasingly looking at short-term campaigns as the way forward, just because of people's attention span and the freshness of content. Your content is going to die within a few hours anyway. So I think planning for a long-term strategy is no longer the way on digital.
Because I was thinking about short and long term because now we're pushing ads, right?
Yeah.
In the short term, we're looking at increased engagement with advertising, but in the long term, it's a problem because it affects consumers' perception of the social media service as a whole. Because you see it as a tool for advertising rather than as a tool for emotional relations.
Yep.
So
I think we've missed that bus. I think we are already at that point where social media is increasingly just a marketplace, no longer a place to meet people. Yeah.
I mean, that's also why maybe that's why Threads came out.
Yeah.
Even though
But now Threads is all content farming anyway. I think we've gone to the other extreme of exploiting storytelling to the point where people are saturated with storytelling as well. We do need marketers who are better at creating great visuals. Spend a little time. If you spend 1 hour on understanding how to create visuals with AI, I guarantee that the profits will be 100-fold from personal experience. Yes? Yes.
Multiple platforms.
Okay.
So I'll just like to hear a little bit of insight on how you run a multiple platform because we have say LinkedIn, IG, TikTok, and the audience is completely, I wouldn't say completely different, but the strategy is also quite different. Sometimes we worry about brand consistency.
Brand consistency is one thing, but I think more important is to follow the platform norms. So I would prioritize that over brand consistency, and we should not mistake brand consistency for voice consistency. Again, AI is a great way to tailor, and AI is incredibly good at this. Any AI you use will be very good at tailoring the same content for different kinds of platforms. So encourage you to use AI to do that. Because again, you feed in the ideas one step at a time. You explain to AI that my LinkedIn audience is these kind of people, my TikTok audience is these kind of people. here is the content, here is the ad copy I have. Can you help me structure this? You give it the full context, you give it step-by-step instructions, it will do it for you.
Maybe I'll just add on to that. I think because we've done this for a while, and I remember in the earlier years, brand persona was a huge thing.
Yeah.
Although nowadays, what our own observation is that brand persona is not so much spoken. Instead, it's catering to the audience demographics. I'm not quite sure if brand persona is really like a history thing, but I think people talk more about meeting your audience where they're at now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of, I didn't know if that was our own sense or whether that's a little bit more general.
No, 100%. You need to meet your audience where it's at, and more than persona, it's authenticity all the way. People care about authenticity now. Personas are a thing of the past. It's important to understand, and that is why now we are studying people more, and that was the whole purpose of this workshop, to focus more on the people and not on the brand. You need to figure out how your brand fits into people's lives. Is your brand B2B or B2C? I see. That does create its own set of challenges, but then your LinkedIn content should possibly be more B2B and even more professional, while your other social media content can afford to be more B2C.
Yeah, so for us, maybe just to share, like on TikTok, we're a little bit more unhinged.
Right. That's great. Unhinged is always good.
It gets going.
Yes, absolutely.
And although sometimes maybe at a more executive level, they worry about whether are we sounding like we are at the same time nobody and trying to meet everybody. So I just wanted to get your sense on whether this is the way it's going forward.
Yeah, I think you don't have a choice when you're both B2B and B2C. You have to do that. You have to have perhaps a different voice telling these different stories. So if you need to make B2B content, perhaps put a face on it, and when you're doing, or the opposite, a face on it being not just the brand account that's putting this stuff out, but like people in the brand who are putting stuff out. So there's ways to create authenticity without losing the brand personality. Yeah. That is very challenging. I don't envy your job. Any other questions, folks? Yes. Yes, coming back to that. As I mentioned, so at this point, 50% of all content on the internet is AI generated. 50%. As I mentioned before, the engagement on this AI generated content hasn't yet caught up. But you all didn't seem to mind my AI generated content, and I just just literally did some of that on the train. So I'm hoping that, and I'm expecting that it's going to get, it's impossible to decipher at this point, and it is so ridiculous that you end up engaging with it. Like my husband last night was showing me a video of somebody standing on an old woman. That makes no sense. But I watched it 3 times because you keep trying to figure out, is it real, is it fake? That is the kind of unhinged content that works on some platforms. So I would say that increasingly people's engagement with AI content has gone up because of the surprise factor. I don't know if you've seen those videos of people cutting a cake shaped like a cat. Yes, you have. People are cutting a cake shaped like a cat and then a real cat attacks them. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. I have watched so many of those videos. So increasingly, because of the surprise element, because we like seeing unexpected stuff, the engagement is just going to go up because of the ridiculous things that are possible with AI. Yes?
I think I was going to ask quite a sobering question regarding AI. Do you think that AI is going to affect the way we perceive things as real and fake? How AI is becoming more real?
Yes.
The possibility that people see things that are fake, that they assume as real is going to be very true, I guess.
So Max has asked a question that I would ask, and then...
Sorry.
No, yes. Oh yeah, you have more. Yeah, sorry.
How would you think that affects digital marketing in the future?
Digital marketing in the future.
Like marketing strategies, brand perception.
So here's the difference between Max and me and people like my husband. We think immediate implications. You and I are thinking about immediate implications. Yes, people are going to get confused between what's real and what's unreal, and that affects marketing. My husband asked the really hard questions. He said, it's going to change whether reality matters. It's no longer about people believing what's real or not. It's not going to matter anymore if it's real or not. So what this debate that we are having is not going to matter to the next generation. They are going to be okay with it.
Maybe they are screwed.
It's going to be a completely different way of thinking about reality. That everything online, everything virtual, everything you see is its own spectrum of real. And that's going to be okay with them. So our hesitation to adopt AI and to adopt this surreal kind of content is holding us back. Like it or not. The next generation has a very different perception of reality. And it's okay. Yes.
Sorry to ask this question at this stage, but would that also bring in gamification of your content?
Yeah, I think that's already there. I think gamification was let out of the box, out of Pandora's box 15, 20 years ago, and it's not gone back in yet. Everything is gamified. That's not going away. Some people do gamification well and use it for good. I love how Duolingo does gamification, for instance. It is going to be about how you craft the experience for your users. It's not going away. And remember that when the internet came up and we had online relationships and long distance relationships, our parents thought we were really weird. We have parasocial relationships. We are talking to people who are in a completely different country. We have friends we've never met. That was so bizarre. The next generation is going to have its own reality. And it's okay. It's an exciting time. Yeah?
If I may just comment on that, right? It's true they will have their own reality. And it's perfectly all right. But what happens if conflict arises?
Conflict will arise. Conflict does arise every day. We don't have the social and mental resources to deal with the conflicts that arise every day, for sure.
Yeah, but because, this is hypothetical, right? But because we had a shared vocabulary about a certain shared reality, we will be able to try and meet somewhere because we have a shared vocabulary.
Yes.
The implication of they have this reality and we have this reality is true, but I'm saying that the coexistence will actually mean that there's a gap. So as long as you don't have to engage, fine, you live your world, I live my world.
Yep.
The problem is that, does that not, because we have no shared vocabulary, does that not reduce the opportunity for a shared humanity? That's my concern.
That's so brilliant and so well put. You all should be in my classrooms. You all are so smart. Yes, that creates fractures. That also creates the first mover advantage. I have to remind everyone that we are here as marketers. There were always issues with shared vocabularies, and there have always been issues in the past. Sometimes those people grow up and help us talk better to the younger generation. Sometimes they help us figure out what we are missing and help us connect the pieces, which is why it is important to have young interns. Use your interns well. Use them to understand the shared vocabulary. You are very good at your set of skills, but every single age group, every single demographic has something important to offer.
I think
we are out of time. Thank you so much. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Very well done.
Well, it's really a very insightful session and very good conversation going on. Thank you, Kapil. We really like your feedback so that we can know what we can do better. So it's quick. Just take the QR code and scan the QR code and It's just going to take a moment of your time. So I'm sure you found this insightful, and of course, please go to our Skill website. You can find more CET courses, especially on marketing, and many other skill sets as well. Right, so as you're completing, maybe I'll just give you some information and instructions what to do. You can exit from the top of the LT, the lecture theatre. Lunch is out there, bento boxes. So if you want some nostalgia, you can always walk just maybe about, I would say, 50 meters to the canteen, right? Good old memories, right? And please come back for the next session before 12:15, where we have invited the co-founder of Shortbag, Joel Leong, to share with you, a bit on his experiences, and as well as, in a way, looking at the practitioner part of things using tech and such, right? So please come back 12:15, and that's going to take about almost an hour, right? And lunch is just outside. Okay, so thank you so much for being here, and thanks again to Kokil.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy your lunch.